Okay, so welcome everybody. Museum Dialogues is an initiative of Museums of Hope, which is again a very humble endeavor to see if museums could cater to well-being of people and environment. And in this series, we are inviting experts who have been working in this space through museums and cultural spaces. Today, we have with us the living team from the Living Waters Museum. Living Waters Museum is a digital museum. They were established in 2017 and they engage with youth in visualizing water heritage and reimagining sustainable, inclusive, and equitable water futures. They use the power of storytelling, technology, interdisciplinary perspectives for this purpose. They're also the founder member of Global Network of Water Museums, which has been endorsed by UNESCO's International Hydrology Program in 2018. We have with us their founder and lead curator, Sara Ahmed, who has over 25 years of applied research experience on water, livelihoods, and social equity. Sara holds PhD in environmental sociology from the University of Cambridge and is currently on the board of WaterAid India. She has published extensively on water governance, has been actively engaged in teaching and mentoring young development professionals in India, and advising a range of development organizations and water networks globally. We also have with us Sukrit Sen from the team of Living Waters Museum, who is an architect and also musician. He plays the tabla. He's been associated with the field of Indian classical music for over 2 decades. His master is in heritage management. He has been with the Living Waters Museum since 2018, and he's worked extensively in the field of water and music, looking at not only songs, but exploring water carrying utensils as instruments and using water as a medium for the propagation of sound waves as well. All of this sounds so exciting, Sara and Sukrit. We're really grateful that you're here with us today and eagerly looking forward to learning from both of you. So the floor is all yours. It's over to you now.
Thank you so much, and warm welcome to all of you out there. I'm going to let Sukrit start first because he's got some music to set the tone for the evening or the morning for some of you. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Purnima, for giving us this opportunity. We are equally thankful to be a part of this beautiful initiative. So I'm guessing like we have a lot of members joining in from India and across the borders. And just to give you a brief introduction of like our country and the kind of work we do from Living Waters Museum, um, whenever we do anything that is shubh or anything that's happy, we always begin with a stotra or something that has some scientific context in our culture. And since I've been working extensively on water and music, and since there has been a lot of music that has been written and documented with association with water in different forms, whether it's a river or rain or a waterfall, and there are different stotras that have also like come up, in various times of the last few years. And so I'm going to sing a small hymn on the river Ganga because that is one river that people really identify our country with. It has youth significance to all the people who use it in the religious context, in the social context, and even in current times. So I'm going to start out with a small stotra, which is the Ganga stotra, and I'm going to then move on to another song, which is in Hindi and is based in Rag Vrindavani Sarang, which is a beautiful composition that basically kind of paints the significance and description of River Ganga through a song. So this is the Ganga song for you. I hope my Tanpura is audible. Just if someone can confirm.
Not right now, Sukrit.
Yeah, is it better now?
Maybe no, it's still quite low.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, now we can.
देवी सुरेश्वरी भगवती गंगे त्रिभुवन तारिणी तरल तरंगे शंकर मौली विमलिनी विमले मम मतिरस्तम तव पद कमले जय प्रबल वेगवती सुरेश्वरी जयति जय गंगे त्रिभुवन तारिणी जग कलुषलाशिनी पार्वती रंगनाथ सुत पर नेक कर हर तपन सुत भरंती में जय प्रबल वेगवती सुरेश्वरी जयति जय गंगे तू नीर निर्मल चलत ढल ढल नीर निर्मल चलत ढल ढल तीर तट अति शोभिनी नगनंदिनी इथ मकर दिनकर इथ मकर दिनकर चंद्रमाघम देहि पद युग भाग में जय प्रबल वेगवती सुरेश्वरी जयति जय गंगे जयति जय गंगे जयति जय गंगे Thank you.
Thank
I
you,
think
Sukrit. This is beautiful.
Was there a second song you were doing, Sukrit? Or was it just one?
We would do just one. I can maybe take up another one at a later stage if we have time.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Sukrit. I think clap for you in a bit. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. All right. So thank you again for joining us, and for giving us this opportunity to talk about water in the context of well-being and hope. I think for all of us, this past 1 year with the lockdown and the pandemic in different forms in different parts of the world brought water to the fore, not only in terms of hand washing and hygiene as part of our safety protocols, but at least in India, in the initial months of the lockdown, when we had migrant workers trudging across arid landscapes to go home, water and quenching thirst was visible on all our screens. And the third image I want you to carry is that of the the seas, the beaches, the streams that I think when we began unlocking, people found to be quite clean because there hadn't been a lot of human interaction. So water is at the heart of well-being. It is at the heart of health and the quality of life and our livelihoods. But we all know that there are challenges around how we use and access and conserve water, and that for us in this field, there is a lot of rethinking right now around what water means for different users, what a new paradigm rooted in notions of ethics, values, respect, etc. would mean. All over the world, there are a number of water museums. I hope some of you have been to a water museum in your country or your neighborhood or visiting another country. And many of these water museums are built around water heritage, whether it's a steam engine, whether it is under sluice gates or aqueducts, or there are open air museums on waterways. There are very new museums like the one in China, which is 12 stories high, the National Water Museum of China. It's quite a new structure. And these museums not only are, repositories of the past, but they also work with children, with young people to talk about water issues, water challenges, scarcity, and water quality, and of course, climate change. And I think we've all been feeling, those of us who've been in the space, and for me, it's been just a few years now since 2017, we're all beginning to wonder what kind of a role can water museums play in helping people connect with all these dimensions of water. So it is from that thinking that a global network of water museums was launched in Venice in 2017, supported by the UNESCO office there, I think the culture wing of UNESCO, but also natural resources. And the idea was that if we can somehow link water museums around the world in a global network, maybe we can learn from each other, we can support each other, and we can support new museums evolving and developing in the global south. I won't go into all the things that the global network has been doing since we launched it, but I will, we can have some questions on that later. I know some of you are here and are part of that as well. And in 2018, UNESCO's Intergovernmental Hydrological Program recognized this global network and the role that it could play towards Sustainable Development Goal 6 on water. It was not an easy resolution to get through because obviously UNESCO thought and many people in UNESCO felt that we should be going to the International Council of Museums, ICOM, which I think some of you may be a part of, or maybe it's ICRAM, sorry, not ICOM. And we argued that we're not museums that deal with art and artifacts per se, but that we'd like to be more engaged in education, and therefore UNESCO's IHP makes a lot more sense to us. So that's how it all came into being, but there was a lot of negotiation around that. So the global network of water museums, when we launched from a boat in Venice with the Tribunal of Water Conflict Resolve, what is it called? The Tribunal of Water from Valencia in Spain. All those, it's a very ancient tribunal. It goes back to the days of the Moors and the Moorish rule in Spain, and how conflicts over access to water for irrigation were resolved. Of course, I don't need to tell you that the tribunal is largely, I think all of it is male, and it has been like that for years. but we had them over and we were on a boat and we were launching this. And this was the basic preamble of the charter, which many of us worked on over time. And you can, I hope you've had some time to read it rather than me reading it for you. But I think it talks about how we'd like to view water, not only as the elixir of life, but as I said earlier, of livelihoods. And that's really important. So the global network, whilst we're global, we also support a lot of local action around SDGs. We also have in our rank and file members from indigenous communities. You know, in the Amazon, water heritage is not something that's in a museum. It's very much around the indigenous communities over there, and unfortunately, many of them are now being decimated by the pandemic. I mean, during this pandemic, but also, of course, from the rampant development that's happening over there. So there are all kinds of water heritage. I won't go into all of that now. So who are we? When I started Living Waters Museum in India in 2017 as a virtual museum, you know, it was a self-driven initiative, much like the Museum of Hope. And we wanted to work with young people in documenting water heritage and in visualizing it in a way that young people could engage with it. That was our mandate. And, you know, we said that if we had to have a physical museum in India, where would we locate it? There are so many amazing water heritage structures across this country, and not one museum that celebrates any of it. It is actually, we've been having dialogues with the Ministry for Water Resources in India around physical museums, but that hasn't gone anywhere. So we started this as a virtual repository. And we said that we would work with schools, we'd work with nonprofit organizations, artists, students. We would curate stories that begin with research. I think that that is very important considering the background that I come from, as well as an academic and a practitioner around water. You can't, you need facts, you need evidence, and you need good referencing. And we also, through the global network, came to work with many artists, not just art and artists in that sense, but also creative people, storytellers, and musicians, like the person you've heard just now, my colleague. And so many more like that. We'll show you some more of that. So when you build a museum without walls, it's a process approach. It's not finite. It can go on, and that's the fun part of it, right? I mean, it's a project for the rest of your life, almost. Collaboration and partnership. So we've done a lot of things with other physical museums, with cafes, with schools, in stepwells and so forth, when of course we could do physical things as well, because the internet itself, the virtual world, is not enough for this kind of an interaction. But of course, Zoom has been fantastic for us in the past year. And at the end of it all, when we set out our own goals, we wanted to know how far a museum could motivate behavioral change around water. I think that is an impact goal that I look at in the long term. It's still, the first few years have been all about content development, and it's very hard to you know, talk about impact and talk about change that way. But because I also teach in interdisciplinary water studios, we have begun seeing some of this impact happening amongst our students, at least in terms of their behavior. We have a new website now, which Sukrit will take you through in a video. We're still testing it. There are still a few glitches, but that's always going to be there. It cannot be the end all of things. It has to also evolve. And I won't go much into that right now. So the kind of stories that we've been working with and supporting research students like Priyanka, who did her master's in Bangalore, looking at the lake system. And this is an animation story that she worked on. And she actually began her research in the archives over there, looking at how these amazing systems of interconnected lakes also had been built by previous kings. And then, of course, what happened during the colonial rule and what it is right now. So, and then she worked with a friend to animate the story. In Ahmedabad, where we were based for the last 3 years, we had a project looking at step wells. Now, step wells, for those of you who may not know what they are, these underground, they sort of capture groundwater there, and they're these amazing architectural wonders that go back to 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, depending on, you know, different kings and patrons and all who built them. And they were places of meetings, they were places for travelers, they were cool, you know, you found shade over there. They were places that when women came to wash clothes, they were places of prayer and worship as well, and blessings. Unfortunately, once you started having piped water systems coming in, many of these step wells simply closed down. And also in the 1980s, UNICEF had a big health campaign in India around guinea worm infection in step wells and all. So there was, you know, people were discouraged from using it. But now there are many attempts to revive them, especially under the Jal Jeevan mission, the Water and Life mission that the government of India launched a few years ago, to look at what are now being called secondary water sources, but initially were our main water sources till we got pipelines and taps in our home. And that is a story you can see across the country. Once you start having piped water, what happens to these community water systems? We had a young student from NID as well, the National Institute of Design in India, create a story for children, and then a fictional story, a little girl who falls into one of these wells, like Alice in Wonderland, and how she discovers through her interaction with people the kind of conflicts between rural areas and urban growth and development for water, and how she has to navigate her way out of this stepwell by you know, switching off these water taps, which are actually inverted water taps, if you can see in the image. So the taps are actually sucking the groundwater from the well upwards towards, you know, skyscrapers and houses and development and so forth. And she meets the oracles who help her negotiate this. So this is a story that we worked on with the idea of creating it as a video, as an interactive video, educational video game. Now that part of it hasn't happened yet because that kind of technology, as many of you know, is extremely expensive to support. It needs a lot more funds than we on our own could support it with. But we do have this beautiful story, and we are looking at ways of what we can do with it. We've worked with students to create stories and a short film around the Sabermati River in Ahmedabad, which is also, as most rivers are, it's been the center of development for the city. And a few years ago, well, I mean, almost a decade ago, the state government decided to develop the urban waterfront, as it were, you know, modeled on the style of Singapore and so forth, and then relocated a number of artisans, washermen, local communities that use this water daily. And as part of my university water studio, we took our students to the campus that you see in the picture there on the left-hand side where these washermen were relocated, and interacted with them and saw what was happening and so forth. And now, apart from the film that was made a few years ago, we have a student currently working to build the Sabermati Archives, which is basically looking for historical pictures on this river. Probably, I think the oldest that he would have would be about 70, 80 years old images. And we're trying to document this as a virtual archive, but hopefully someday we can have a physical exhibition just to show people how things have changed over time. This is an example of one of the physical exhibitions we did very early on, looking at the story of water and food through these amazing utensils. And it's also linked to a restaurant in Ahmedabad and a private museum that is a collection of utensils. And the student working with us at that time wanted to explore the cultural belief systems around water and pots and utensils. So we developed stories and had the pots talking themselves in the first person. And we also looked at virtual water, the water embedded in the food that we eat. So we looked at, I won't go into everything over here, but the water like on a plate of food that you got to eat in the restaurant, we looked at the water that was there in the grains and in the vegetables and the lentils and all that people were consuming, and got to have them exchange cards and trade so that they could get a plate that was somehow more sustainable. So this was something else that she worked on. This was a few years ago, and we designed all these beautiful panels and have now given them to this museum to keep, because it's unfortunately a museum which has a great collection, but as we know, a lot of museums don't have good content especially for young people to interact with. So we gave this to them. We had a global exhibition looking at the role of women, water and work around the world. We got images, photographs, videos, artwork, and there's a link over there. You can see it over there. We can put this link in the chat box later. This I think we did in 2019, we launched this. So I'm just giving you a snapshot of some of our work. This is Sukrit performing for the students. The music, the Jal Tarang, and he explained it earlier and he will explain it to you again, but how water is a medium both for sound, but also the material in which water is contained, the pot, the glass, the steel cup. Water sounds not the same depending on what material it is in. And I think that is very interesting. And also whether the pot is half full or half empty, So and these are an example of some of these events where young people who have done films around various aspects of water as students, they've come and they've talked about it. They've talked about sustainable development. They've read their stories, their poems, etc. So this was all in pre-pandemic days. We've also, around the stepwells, taken children, they don't even know much about the history of the stepwell in their own village or their own community. So these are our students engaging with them, talking to them about the history of these beautiful structures, talking and engaging them, in doing some artwork around it, some interactive art and so on. So this has also been done with children with special needs. During the lockdown, we moved from physical events to virtual events, as did many museums. And Sukrit helped us design and launch a global call. I wouldn't call it a competition. Pani Ki Kahani, Water and Music. So we were asking people to submit short video films, stories or performance art or a poem whatever in animation. We got a lot of entries, and we selected 10 for the museum portal itself, but all of it is there on YouTube. We also had musicians, well-known musicians in India and across the border in Bangladesh, in a conversation with young people on water and youth and music and what can we do as artists. And I think this is an example. I mean, at least, you know, it was something very, very positive that happened with us during this lockdown period. And a lot more storytelling, which again, Sukrit has been behind. The Dastan Goys, these storytellers that have their roots back in Iran and Persia and all. They did an amazing piece of work. Other events with other storytellers, I won't go into all of them, but we managed to get on quite a few of them during this time. And we found that a lot of this was also very healing. And another thing I think we also came to the fore was the fact that because all this was happening on Zoom, we were able, like we are this afternoon, able to connect globally with so many amazing people who would then jump in and share their stories, you know, similar to the ones they just heard. So I think that was a great beginning. I think the thing I'm most excited about is this new partnership that evolved during the lockdown in July last year with people that we really didn't know. Was all built on trust and passion for water and for understanding our urban water landscapes. So we launched this platform in Mumbai in July last year. And we started getting urban planners and architects, conservation architects, artists from the fishing community, photographers, students, etc. And they're all working towards this amazing exhibition that we'll be launching on March 21st, Confluence. And to me, the exhibition itself symbolizes the coming together of so many people across, as I said, you know, across academic and professional backgrounds, but it also symbolizes what Mumbai stands for, the oceans and the four rivers coming together. And, you know, that kind of a confluence as well, and a confluence of art, of science, of all sorts of things. So I'm going to stop over here. I think I've run through the entire presentation right now. I am going to let Sukrit take you on a little virtual tour of the website, so then you can look at it, you know, when you have more time. And then I think we'll open up to questions. Yeah, Purnima?
Yes, that sounds great, Sarah. Thank you so much.
I'll stop my screen sharing.
Hello, I'm back, and I will just share my screen. Yeah, is my screen audible? Sorry, is my screen visible?
Yes, yes, Sukrit, it is.
Our colleague Bhargav, who basically handles everything in the web portal, is away today for some other commitments that he has, and he's very kindly requested me to just go through the website. So I'm just going to go through the website, how it looks in real life. So as we go to www.livingwatersmuseum.org, this is the kind of background or the first page that comes on the web page, and as we go inside, we have the different galleries or the different stories that we've been featuring on our website. So on the first page, we have all the featured stories that have been contributed by different people, as mentioned. And we've also curated the different galleries that we have based on the kind of material that we have received, and we've classified things as per rivers of India, communities and livelihoods, water and the arts, design and architecture, traditions, rituals and practices, ecology and nature, and then we also have works that we have done ourselves from Living Waters Museum, as Sarah has already mentioned about most of them in her presentation. So we can look into like few of the works for for example,
Oh, so Sukrit,
yeah,
it's going to take you into the map view first. Yeah.
yeah. So so the first one will show the map view, which shows the location of all the works that we've done. So it like we've done works in like different parts of the country, but mostly it has been concentrated on the western part of the country because we were based in Ahmedabad. We've shifted to Pune right now, to Isa, but we have different aspects of water that has come out from different parts of the country, as shown here. So we've done some great work in the northeast as well, and we were given a small photo story and a very serene photo story by Mr. Sumit Barua, who's a photographer, and we've tried to curate that in our website through these series of photographs that you notice on the screen, which gives you a kind of a hint of what are the practices of the Brahmaputra and culture around it. So this is kind of like how we try to do it. We also have short videos associated.
দেহিয় তোমারে বেজার নদীত যাপে
So again,
মাই
songs that have been kind of associated with the river with the Brahmaputra, to get a really holistic kind of picture of what the Brahmaputra is all about. Um, we have different works that have been done on the ecology and natural point of view. Again, a lot of works on the south, as Sarah already mentioned that Priyanka had done a story on the lakes of Bangalore and its current context. So all these
Bangalore,
videos.
once known as the city of a thousand lakes, it might well be called the city of concrete today. Raw
So all these
traffic and
videos
high-rise
are kind
towers
of
mar a
embedded
landscape once which
on our YouTube page, which is linked with the website. So you can always find these videos from our website, or you can go to YouTube and find Living Waters Museum and find all the videos associated. This was another project that was done by us, Women Waterworks, and also explained by Sarah during her presentation. So this takes us to our sister website, which is Women Waterworks Network, where we see the stories of different aspects of water submitted by women who have worked around it from different parts of the country again. And you will notice that something that's different on this website is that we scroll the screen horizontally, which is very different from other web pages. So we just try to do this so that we know we are a virtual museum, but we try to really give an approach that a real museum has. So as we go from one gallery to another. Um, so one of our other very interesting works that we had done was the Steps of Hope, where we tried to document different step wells in using modern day technology, 3D photography and 3D photogrammetry, and which acts as not just kind of geolocating where these step wells are, but also acts as another initiative to document these step wells, which often is missing in today's all the lists that we have. So this was an initiative that we did again, to invite many students and many collaborators to come be a part of us. This is another 360-degree photogrammetry that was done on the Mata Bhavani stepwell. A detailed kind of walk is also available on our YouTube channel of this. We also have other technology, which is 3D modeling of this, which is through laser scans of the real life uh, picture of how these wells look today and how these can be very well documented. So this is all about the website. Y'all can please visit our website at www.livingwaters.org to find more on this. So I will end here.
Oh, thank you so much, Sukrit.
Yeah,
That was very helpful.
thank you.
So I think we can open up to questions now, Purnima.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much, Sara and Sukrit. This is so inspiring.
Thank
And
you. I don't have any power in my house right now. I mean, the lights
mm,
are switched off, so there is some charge on my laptop, but I hope I don't lose you all.
oh no, yeah, I hope so too. Okay, so we're open for questions right now. If anybody would like to ask any questions, if not, then can I begin?
Mhm.
Can I go first? Okay. So I was just wondering, what's the path ahead? What next? What are the plans for the Living Waters Museum? What are you looking at?
Okay, so we haven't talked about some of the new work. I mean, apart from the exhibition coming up later this month. But Sukrit has started work in Calcutta, where he's based, working with a group called Immersive Trails and documenting the ghats of Calcutta. So, Sukrit, sorry, we didn't mention that work, but maybe we can talk about it coming up. And I think you've got a sketch walk tomorrow, right,
On
Sukrit?
Monday, on Monday.
On Monday, okay,
Yeah.
on Monday with students and sketching the carts and all of that. So so we kind of like the idea of looking at urban landscapes around or urban waterscapes
Hmm.
and bringing together, these kind of interdisciplinary group of people to document what's happening to waters around them, because the water crisis is going to be urban, very much so. We're seeing a greatly urbanizing world, which is going to be more and more extractive of water. And we're going to see not enough being done in terms of recharging our water sources, building sustainability, etc. So that is something we will try to focus on. We've just moved base from Ahmedabad institutionally to the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research in Pune. And ISER has a very large science outreach program that works with schools and
Hmm.
teachers. So you saw all this amazing content on our website, right? But if it's not used, if it doesn't reach people, if we don't have those stories being, retold or talked about, or those videos shown in schools, then it doesn't mean anything. You're creating a beautiful repository, but it has to be accessed. So we have a very good following on social media with Instagram and Facebook and all of that. But we want to build that up more through the website. So that's something else that we will be focusing on. And Purnima, I'm not one that makes big major plans for building things in the future. I think we've been able to respond to many opportunities. We've come up incrementally and in small steps, but
Right.
every corner we've turned, we've found people who were willing to collaborate and partner with us, and that's been the sort of beauty
Absolutely.
of this. Yeah.
Right. That's wonderful. There's a question here in the chat for you. Do you also map vanished water bodies and research about how to bring them back again? To an extent, can you quote an example if there is one?
So there's work that a student from the Tata Institute of Social Studies had done, I think, in 2019 on the Canis in Kerala, which are also little wells that were linked to, I mean, all houses had these Canis and they used that water for drinking or for rituals at home. And now that's a beautiful story, the Canis. The pictures over there are amazing, stunning, because this guy was a photographer as well as a student of sociology. And I think, what's happening to the Canis with modernization over there and all of that. So yes, they are, and they are trying to restore or renovate. And the way they're doing it is obviously not the way the caneys were built, by just putting concrete rings around to support them and so on. So that is something we've been documenting. The rivers, the springs is something I'd like to look at. The springs, and we've done this work in the Northeast right now for the first time with a small grant we had from the British Council in October. And I think the Northeast is quite unexplored. I mean, it's not that it's unexplored, but it's not so much in our mainstream thinking around water. And so that is one place I'd like us to do more work in, if we can build those local partnerships. The other state that we're beginning to look at, well, it's no longer a state, is Jammu and Kashmir. We'd like to, we've reached out to individuals over there, and I'd like to see some work evolving and developing over there, because there's some amazingly beautiful waterworks there as well. So yeah, there is, I mean, if anyone is interested, there is work going on. I mean, there is a Facebook page called Open Wells. It's called Open Wells of India or Open Wells. But people do post pictures of wells and step wells and all sorts of work there. So that's there. There is a global step well atlas also on Facebook. So those kind of things are there. Have you documented coastal communities? Okay. Yeah, so we've not documented coastal communities. That is also something we had talked with people who work with fishing communities in Kerala. One of the things is that since India has such a huge and extensive coastline, but we don't have any museum of any sort that looks at the livelihoods of our fisher folk and our fishing communities, or the boats that they use. I think there's a small museum on boats in Kerala with the Center for Water Resources Development and Management. It's a governmental museum at a government-run center. But yeah, the closest we've come to coastal communities is the work that Parag Tandil from the Koli community in Bombay has been doing with dry fish, and it's a very large dry fish economy. So he's been working with that, and he and his partner have started the Tandil Fund of Archives to document what the Koli community is going through. So that is something we'd like to look on. I mean, everything, there are lots of ideas. I don't think funding is a big issue. I think the ideas, but you need two-legged people to work on ideas. To generate many ideas for many things, but you know, people work with Living Waters Museum for 6 months to 1 year because they're doing a research project or an internship, and then they move out and move on.
Right.
If I may, Sara, there's also already quite a bit of information available at the Mehrangarh Museum in Jodhpur.
Yes.
About, so I mean, I think a lot of that would be ready-made available for incorporation into something like this.
Right. So if you, Rosama, I know you've been in touch with me on the chat. If you have some ideas on who I can contact there, that would be great.
Sure, I'll put you in touch with the person who handles their archives in the museum. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Thank you, Rosama. There's a question from Jenny as well. How do you see the relationship between your cross-disciplinary approach to water, looking at human culture, ecology, local and global issues around water like climate change, and aquariums and zoos? Where do you see the opportunity for physical museums, zoos, and aquariums, and this powerful virtual museum model based in community collaboration?
Wow. That's a question I'm going to have to think about. Is there any way of getting that or some of these questions? And
yes, I'm going to save all of these and send these to you.
Yes, and then the emails. But I don't know, does anyone else have any thoughts on this?
Sara, if I may, yeah. So what happens is, we've been working. We have certain aspects of water which are really being talked about by the scientific community. But when we talk about this scientific community, it's a very niche crowd. It's a very small crowd that we're talking about. And the question here really talks about how do we really involve the people beyond that circle. And that is something that Living Waters Museum has been really trying to do when we talk about involving aspects of music, for example, when we talk about aspects of storytelling, for example. This is, we are not doing this just to maybe have a entertainment event of sorts, but this is really to evoke that thought process in people. And since we really work with children a lot, and we've really noticed that when we have these stories, we really try to ask these questions that, okay, what do you think about this now? So when for example, I will talk about like an experience that I have had with music. And when I do my sounds of music, I keep asking these children that, you know, when you're filling a bottle of water from your filter, do you understand that the water is being filled up without looking at the bottle? So how does, and everyone replies that yes, they do, because the sound changes. And and that is a way to kind of start and evoke, evoke children that, can you also listen to the sound of water? And if you see that, there's water pouring away, can you go and stop it? So, these are ways by which we have to start. The moment we tell children, you guys need to, stop wasting water, you guys need to, like, not throw around water at children. We need to really find innovative ways to, reach out to children with these topics. And even with Ghats of Calcutta, what we are doing is when we are documenting these ghats. And I would actually go back to another question that was asked in the thing, that are we documenting water heritage that has been lost? So yes, so we are actually juxtaposing a map from 1849 and trying to see what are the ghats that still exist. It's funny that 90% of the ghats still exist today, which have been renamed even after 200 years, but they still exist. But there are many ghats that have gone up away. And we are really involving school children to start talking about these ghats and how. When we talk about how, there are these, school children from, a few schools here in Calcutta who have written a rap song on these ghats, which talk about the story. So how do we really build an awareness about these, lost ghats, which are not there today, which people of Calcutta don't know about, through innovative means? And when we tell students to come and, write an essay on this ghat, students might not be that interested. But the moment we say, okay, fine, why don't you prepare a rap song on this, the next gen students really come forward and the work is really done. So I think we are really working towards more innovative approaches to, really include different parts of the society to be a part of our initiatives. So yes.
I, that's great, Sukrit. I think the question from Jenny was also about whether we see ourselves working with zoos and aquariums.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, zoos and aquariums in India are rather sad places, some of them. But I do see the potential for working perhaps with wildlife sanctuaries. Would be more. We've got a story on the website which Sukrit also showed, which is the Thol bird sanctuary, about 40, 50 kilometers outside of Ahmedabad. And this young girl who is a photographer and likes, she went and took all these amazing pictures of the bird life from very, very early in the morning. And so that kind of a thing is possible. I don't know what we would do with our aquariums and zoos, frankly speaking. But I have to think about that one. It's the first kind type of question we've had like that. We've had speakers who work with, do you all, I mean, I won't be able to explain it right now, but mimicry, if you've heard that term, and try and understand what it is, but how does our human world mimic in what form? And so that kind of Prashant, trying to remember his last name, but he does some amazing work around that. And that is something we would like to engage with as well. And we were hoping we would be able in our nature gallery to build content along those lines. But it's difficult. It's where people are, it's what passion people have, what partnerships there are, and then how we can,
right,
move ahead with content development. But some good ideas here.
Then there's another question, Sarah. This is from Anjali. What are the key differences between water utilization and the entailed water body structures between urban and rural India currently? And what does that imply for an increasingly urban landscape?
it would be really hard to answer this question for India as a whole. I think urban and rural areas are very contextualized, not only with the people who live there, but differences of class and caste and gender and so on that affect how we use our water. I think in rural areas, at least from what I've done 20 years, 25 years of field work in rural India, and what I've seen is the way people reuse and use water and the way they store water safely at home and cover the pot, the matkas with cloth and, and just very, very basic filtration processes, using the water from washing your utensils for something else, for your kitchen garden perhaps, switching to drip irrigation systems, micro irrigation structures, looking at check dams, looking at rainwater harvesting. There's a lot that's happening in rural India around water conservation and use. And a lot of that work is being done by some of our leading non-governmental organizations in this country, and increasingly in partnership with the government and also with the private sector through CSR funding, right? So that all is going on. But we also know that rural areas have, in terms of water allocations per person per day, what we call liters per capita per day, rural areas are it's 70 liters per person per day, including livestock. And in urban areas, the allocation is something like 120 liters per person per day because of our greatly wasteful flushing systems. If we can stop people from flushing all the time, we'd be saving a lot of water. But that said, we know that in many urban areas, the elite are using more than 300 liters of water per person per day. That's pretty well known, to water the gardens, to have your, institutionally green, beautiful lawns in our institutions, etc. So that culture of water conservation in urban India is still needs a lot of working on, which is why water is creeping into curriculums at schools and even in universities. So Ahmedabad University ran a water studio. Shivnath Nadar University is running a water program. TIS is there. Terry runs a water school. So increasingly, we are looking at interdisciplinary water education across the country in many, many places. And I think that is going to be very important for what we mean by behavioral change for water. I don't know whether that answers the question, but rural areas definitely have structures where people can capture rainwater and use them. And in urban areas, even though it's mandated for buildings to have water harvesting and percolation tanks and all, or very few people, I think that was also something we have been thinking about as a virtual museum, making this information accessible. Many people, there are people like in Bangalore, we have, what's his name now? Not the Rain Man, but there's a group called Biome, and Vishwanath, who's doing a lot of work around urban water conservation. I mean, I believe his whole house is an example of sustainable living. So there are people like that who are doing that, but these are small examples. They're actually a drop in the bucket, to use that word, or a drop in the ocean. And we need more people to do this, and we need more people to be able to access those technologies and have that information available. It's not enough for government policy to say you should conserve and you should do this and you should participate, and but how? So that, I think, is important. Sorry, I find myself.
Sara, there's a response from Anjali that this does answer her question. And then there's one from Jenny here. Are you able to read it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So where are you based? Jenny is, she's in the US, I presume. I always manage to go to zoos and aquariums when I'm traveling overseas, but in India, those are not places I would choose to visit. But that would be great. Yes, I'd love to see how we could help.
Yeah.
I, I'm
Hi,
just
Jenny.
Can you
Hi.
hear me? Hi.
Hi.
So I think I also think there's a lot that museums, zoos, and aquariums could learn from your approach, and found it really interesting that you deliberately did not work with ICOM to be identified or to work with them as a museum, but you also talk about yourself as a museum. And there's a lot of discussion going on in the US too about what is a museum, what's a museum's role, really pulling back and trying to understand, and why are we so focused on our collections and what is our role with the community. Anyway, I'll stop, but this is very exciting to hear about. I think there's so much to learn from what you're doing.
You're in Baltimore. So I have a son, I have only one son, who is at Johns Hopkins. And I've been to your aquarium in Baltimore, and it's amazing. And I have videos of the jellyfish and all the posters that talk about what jellyfish mean in terms of climate change, right? And environment and all of that. And I was thinking, I mean, this was almost a couple of years ago, and I was thinking, yes, how do we integrate some of that thinking? Because children love all this, you know? They
do, and more, at least in the US, families attend aquariums and zoos more people, and a broader range of people attend aquariums and zoos than any other kind of museum.
Right. Yes.
And they're telling stories about water, but a national aquarium is all about water.
Right.
It's about the world of water. But in that aquarium, I worked there for 7 years. There are I think I can say no stories about people's cultural relationship to water. And that I think is really missing. I mean, hearing you all, I was like, wow, there's very much a focus on the biology and the animals and the ecology, going as far as climate change, just like understanding those differences, but it feels like it's really missing that cross-disciplinary piece.
Right. That's a really good thing to think about. And I'm on the board of the global network right now. We're actually very poorly funded, as we don't have funds from UNESCO or anything. So we're all raising funds as well. But I'm going to take that up. We have a board meeting coming up very, very soon. And I'm going to bring that up as an idea for potential collaboration, because aquariums and zoos do have funding. They have people adopt animals, and I don't know about adopting fish, but I know that they raise money through adoption, like you adopt an animal and something, and you do these things. And I agree that the stories, and particularly the stories around conflict between animals and people, and whaling, for example, or so many other kinds of conflicts, there could be a way of talking about communities and indigenous communities and water. And animal life. Yeah, it's a good thing to think about. I will keep this in my thing. Yes. Yeah, Jenny will connect.
Yes.
If I could just follow up from Jenny's question and comment here. And Sarah, what about even just generally all the museums that are out there? There's so much in collections through objects, paintings, art, which is connected with our water heritage and the communities. And so are there ways in which they could collaborate with you, or could there be a model so that they could also bring in all this awareness through their work, because museums are indeed rethinking their roles with all this climate change and the pandemic?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that the Indian government had thought about a national water museum. We had a workshop 2 years ago with bringing, again, a lot of people some of them whose content you've seen online as well.
Yeah.
Had discussions around a museum on the Ganges, on the Ganga, the whole flow, and talking about climate change and industrial waste and so forth. We've had conversations with some of the NGOs in Ahmedabad about building community participatory museums, and also one in an old waterworks along the Sabermati as well. So there is scope for that. There are utensils, there are things, not much in terms of artifacts, but also a lot of interesting artwork, you know, the Warli artists, the Gond artists. There's some amazing storytelling through art. There are archival images that show you what our rivers were earlier, 500 years ago or 400 years ago. They're beautiful. And when the British were here, one of the things that they left behind were these amazing etchings and prints and all of various water bodies in this country. And I'm trying to collect some of those as well. Trying to build my own little artifact collection at home for something one day. But I think, yes, we can do some of that. We've been a little disappointed with conversations around the physical museum space, and because then they don't move. And unfortunately, then the pandemic came, and everyone's, and with due reason, everyone's resources have gone over there. But that is something we could look at. And someone's asked a question here on urban issues. How might you incorporate questions about and promote awareness of water recycling? So one of the examples that comes to mind of water recycling and neighborhood action and the role of local municipalities is the town of Bhuj in Kutch. It's the border between India and Pakistan. And Bhuj has revived the lake, which is also a very ancient lake over there and a source of water. But the NGO that I was visiting at that time also took me to see what they had done in one of the neighborhoods, which had a lot of wastewater and poor drainage problems, and how they got this whole urban community to come together, to work together, to make the roadworks proper, make the drainage flow, make the flows happen and all of that. And I really liked that example in an urban context. It's very difficult to get collective action, right? And I wanted to have that whole story documented. So it's good that someone has reminded me about that, because I need to follow up. A lot of times we get all these things and then they slip, there's no one there to follow up on that.
There's also a follow-up comment from Yatin. Yeah.
Resident Associate. That's a good comment, Yatin. And I think Sukrit works with Rotary groups, Lions Club, Rotary, etc. These are also very good bodies to get connected with, and obviously they also have funding. And I now see a lot of interest in them to work on WASH, water and sanitation and hygiene sets of issues. So yes, so I guess the question is that we at the moment are trying to build content in a collaborative manner. But the other thing is how, taking that content out and then raising, these questions, raising awareness, etc. Is that our work as well? Because I think for people who work in the field of education, it is a different approach almost. It's a different, you need to be able to handle schools, to be able to handle children. So, and we're not a development NGO. I think I was very clear when we started. We didn't want to be in that implementation development space because I am already a part of that space. I've done that for many years, and I sit on the boards of many NGOs in this country talking about these issues. So that's my development work. But we wanted to do something that reached out, that was celebrating water and also making people think about their water and where it comes from and their stories around water. And we wanted to do things differently. But I agree that if we have to have a bigger footprint, a bigger impact, then yes, we need to find ways of reaching out. We're a very small team. Right now, Sukrit is the only one who was available to join this conversation from 5 people on the team. So the way we build that collaborative partnership in Mumbai, and if we can do something similar in Calcutta and in other places, that's the way we can work then.
there's also a lot of people, you said you don't want to be part of the development network.
No, I am part of it, Rosam. I'm very much a part of it.
Yeah, but there's a lot of work. See, I am personally very concerned with all this, the riverfront projects planned across so many cities where a lot of concretization and building is happening. And, like I worked with the Times of India for some years,
Right.
and the lady who reported from Nashik was actually telling me that the river is now flowing like a drain because it's all concretized, and
Right.
all the drain water is all over the place because that is not channelized. So that's the kind of future we are seeing. And there are people already, like there is Yamuna GA Abhiyan, and
Yes.
there is the South Asia Network of
Yes.
Dams.
Yes.
There's a lot of information which uh, I just think that if we could all come together, then in time we could at least build the kind of narratives that need to be built for pushing out, like material that needs to be more widely read. I
Right.
just don't see. There's now a town planning project proposed in the PCMC area, the Pimpri Chinchwad area, and a lot of building is happening right where the flood line is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think these things we don't kind of get to know much about in time, and it's once it's begun to be implemented that people get to know, and then the objection happens.
Right. So there is the India Water Portal, which also has some of this information, like it has a lot of stories and all of that. There are various other online things that do some more of this kind of work that you're talking about, Rosama. And we didn't want to repeat all of that, but I agree that information, and right now the online world is a very crowded space, right? I mean, I was told that 95 people registered for this webinar, and we have what, 25, 26 people online when we started. So that's what we're also facing, and I think we have to accept that. But we're sort of thinking through some of these issues, and how when I started in 2017, I did a lot of talks at places that I was working with in those days, and NGOs and international institutions, etc. I found a lot of resistance from the water world to the notion of museums and to the notion of cultural heritage, because culture and cultural practices is not always a part of the mainstream discourse around integrated water resources management, or IWRM. So right now we are in partnership with ECOMOS and others like ICOM, probably also, maybe not ICOM, ECOMOS and another stakeholders to bring water and heritage on the sustainable water development agenda, or some such thing, in 2023. It's a UN, one of those, big UN kind of platforms. And many of us are working together to see how we can bring water and heritage on that agenda together, and not heritage in the kind of artifactualized dead sense of the world, but very much as our living heritage. So the World Water Forum, which some of you may know happens every 3 years, and the last one was in Brazil in 2018. It was meant to happen this year, but it's not happening. It'll be next year now in Senegal. So 2018 was the first time that the World Water Forum, which has been going on for many years, it has all the big corporate sponsors that you can think of on water. It's the first time that heritage was on that agenda. And some amazing people from Brazil speaking about the rape of the Amazon. And that was their heritage, their water heritage that they were talking about, and showing us these beautiful images. So yes, it is coming on the agenda, but there's been a lot of pushback for this. And you can imagine why I don't need to speak about it. Okay.
Sara, there's a question from Mukesh Sharma. Is there any documentation related with maritime heritage?
Oh yeah. Yes, there maritime heritage of India. Yeah. Sukrit, who is that woman who's done, she passed away. She's a famous historian who's worked on maritime heritage. Very bad with remembering names, but I will, who is this now? Mukesh? Okay, yeah, I will get back to you on this one. But there is work. We know some people who've worked on trade routes across the Indian Ocean as well. A friend of mine who is Portuguese, but has been working in India as a visiting professor for many years, is currently in Goa with the university there. I can ask him, so he would be very good to answer this. But there are, what was her name? Litika, she passed away some years ago. She was a very famous Indian historian who's worked on maritime history of India. And just, I mean, her name slips my mind.
Lutika Vardarajan ma'am, but she expired.
Yes, that's
long
the
back.
one I was talking about. So her books, her work would also be on, have some things on maritime heritage. If I'm not mistaken, she's done some work there.
And Jenny had shared some link here talking about the idea of collaborating with museums that have collections and sites.
Right.
Yeah.
So we need someone who's going to be more aggressively doing outreach work with us, you know, and making these partnership connections, because for me, it almost is me most of the time, or people like Sukrit and all, but I also teach, or I was, you know, teaching. So that also, it takes up a lot of time and energy. And I think we were having all these projects going on. We really had our hands full right now. But this talk has been really great, Purnima, because I was a little tired and saying, gosh, how many talks am I doing? But every talk has a different audience and a different set of questions. And some of the questions that have come out here are wonderful. Really very inspiring ideas. I am so very grateful to people like Rosama who've offered to help. Rosama, I am going to get to you. Purnima is going to share all your emails with me, at least the people who are in the chat. Mukesh, Yatin, Lav.
Also,
Rosama, Jenny, yeah.
Just wanted, is it all right, Sarah, if I share your email address here again?
Of course, please do. I think I typed it up somewhere earlier in the chat.
So I've just shared my email address as well as Sarah's email address. So if you would like to reach out to her, you could do that. And yeah, this has been a very interesting participatory session. So glad that everybody came up with all these questions. Yes, any other? Jatin is saying that he'll share your website with his RWA and extended social circle.
I don't know where everyone is from, so that would be really great also. At least. So yeah, Jatin, what is RWA?
Resident Welfare Association. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where is this? L East?
Jatin is from Delhi.
Yeah, from Delhi. Okay, great. Yeah, I think to spread the word, to make this into the bigger project it was intended to always be, we really need more hands on board, you know, and we're struggling a little bit. I mean, the global network was also meant to be a space for that kind of global collaboration. That is happening, but we see it happening with, you know, small clusters of people, because everyone is busy trying to finance their own museums or raise funds or whatever it is, and collaboration requires time and effort. But for me, the global network has been a tremendous peer support group, and also the whole energy that a lot of the young people on the team have brought to the project. You know, that's just been amazing. I think I've learned so much from my team that that's been very good. And for me, it's like keeping everything together. They do all the work, really.
This is wonderful. So we have Rosama and we also have Jenny offering to help
Yes,
connecting you with.
definitely, and Rosama, both of you. I'm going to be tapping you.
That's lovely. We have a hand raised.
My mother, does she want to say something that's going to be?
Yeah, I was wondering if.
I don't know. Maybe she did it by accident. There's someone waiting to enter.
Yeah, I've just let them in again. I think they got disconnected.
I don't know whether I'll ask her if if she just
Yeah,
hand up maybe by mistake.
yeah, probably. Okay, so do we have any more thoughts, comments, any other thing anybody would like to share?
I just wanted to say again, this has been incredibly inspiring. I've worked for 25 years in aquariums, and I feel like what you all are doing is really pushing for you, and I know more about US museums, are really inspiring examples of where aquariums, zoos, museums need to be pushing in terms of crossing over in integrating into sorry, it's very early here, interdisciplinary approaches, and really thinking about the stories that the communities can bring to the museums, and to disrupting what people at US museums are talking about, sort of the expertise always being the rule. So both welcoming people's stories in, and changing that authority and expertise, and being more meaningful.
Right.
So thank you.
No, Jenny, I think it's been really good hearing you speak and talking about aquariums, because I've always loved aquariums, you know. But we had a friend, a colleague, a professor from one of the universities in Bristol. And when he was visiting us in Ahmedabad and saw what we were doing with the Sabermati river stories, he wanted us to, you know, bring this kind of concept of rivers and storytelling and all to Bristol, and maybe do a twin city exhibition of some sort, you know. So that was an idea that we can think about. It never materialized for whatever reason. I think they were trying to get funding from the waterworks there, the public water agency in Bristol, and they couldn't understand the relevance of bringing an Indian story and an Indian city to Bristol, and wanted. We said we would work with the university and students to show how you can develop these kind of stories and what it really means. You know, what is the process involved, the research, the curation, the looking for images, the referencing, the credits, etc., etc. You know, and the visualization. We would have been happy to have done that, because I think people have ideas. They just need to be shown a little bit of the way, you know. So yeah, that's a good thing to keep thinking about. How can we twin some of these ideas?
Okay, so that's wonderful. I think this is. Oh, we're good. We're in time, so this is probably a good time to close
Yes,
our
if there are no
session.
more
Is it?
questions, and you will share this chat with us.
Yes, absolutely. And this will also go online on the Facebook page. So everybody, please feel free to share it with more people who would be interested in the same. Thank you so much, Sarah and Sukrit, and also to all our participants for making this such a lively session. Sarah and Sukrit, also thank you for all the great work you're doing, and it's really inspiring. It's thought-provoking, and also gives a lot of hope to all of us in this space.
I think we should be thanking you, Purnima, for what you're doing.
So thanks a lot. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here, especially Sophie. Hi, Sophie.
Do you know her?
Just wanted to say hi. I see your hand raised. Okay, so everybody have a great evening. Take care, or a great day ahead, and take good care of yourselves. Keep in touch, and do write to Sarah or to me if you feel like reaching out for anything.
Right. Yeah, great. Thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciated all these questions. Thank you for the music and the songs, Sukrit, as
Yes,
always.
absolutely.
And some of you who've written all these wonderful things in the chat box, we will be following up with you. And thank you for joining us.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.